Welcome once again from Johannesburg here in South Africa. My name, of course, is Evan Janssen. This show is always live. It's broadcast from our studios right here in Auckland Park. Don't forget, between 9 and 12, Newsroom is now live on YouTube as well. You can watch us back on demand later in the day if you prefer to do that as well. Still, protests among students in the news here in South Africa. Elvis will give us a complete roundup shortly. But before we go there, there's been lots of reaction on social media. Anine, just give us a quick update.
Yes, Evan, definitely still a lot of reaction on what happened outside of Parliament yesterday with the national shutdown. But that has been overshadowed this morning with the Johannesburg shutdown and the UJ fees must fall. We'll take a look at what students are tweeting from the Auckland Park campus this morning.
Yeah, thank you very much, Anine. Let's go straight to our news desk where Elvis is standing by.
Evan, let's now take a look at all your headlines. Western Cape High Court in Cape Town to hear an urgent application by parents of the protesting students about the increase in fees and the march that took place yesterday. ANC will meet with the youth and student leaders to discuss the ongoing Fees Must Fall campaign that has hit the universities across the country. And opposition parties have in the meanwhile expressed disappointment at the Finance Minister Nhlanhla Nene's medium-term budget policy statement. Those are all your news coming up, but first let's hear it from Kendall Makamate. What's coming up in your sports news?
Good morning, Elvis. Thank you very much, and good morning to you at home. Now, coming up in sports in the next hour at 10:20 is that Bidvest Wits shoot to the top of the Absa Premiership after an own goal by Pirates keeper Obono gives them the win in Orlando. And Manchester City grab a win at the death as United get away with a draw in Moscow. And all this as Springbok coach Hanneke Meyer talks up the New Zealand team as the best ever to play the game. And that's where we leave it with the sports. Back to you, Elvis.
Thank you, Kendall. Let's now take a look at your top story this hour. Parents of university students who participated in disruptive Fees Must Fall campaign protests at Parliament yesterday approached the Western Cape High Court late last night. This to have the action taken by police during several tense standoffs ruled as unconstitutional and to apply for an urgent interdict preventing the police from unlawfully breaking up peaceful protest. 29 people were arrested by police after a large number of students made their way onto the parliamentary precinct demanding to be addressed by the Higher Education Minister Bladen Zamande.
A tense day of running battles between irate students and public order police. Students are now calling on the court to protect them, and their claims of being manhandled by police officers have forced them to seek justice. Judgment in the matter is expected today.
What we will be doing later on is to lead actual evidence from some of the student protesters. They'll be detailing the rights violations that they faced, and the state attorney council on behalf of the Minister of Police will have an opportunity to lead evidence from their side, of course, and to put before the judge why they believe an order is not warranted or should not be granted.
Concerned parents too are part of the urgent application.
I got shoved and pushed around by police. I saw the same with others. And I then thought, this is impossible. And we called the Legal Resource Center, and we thought it's necessary to discuss the possibility of a restraining order on the police.
Meanwhile, the Cape Peninsula University of Technology has also approached the court for an urgent interdict to prevent students from unlawfully occupying any portion of its premises. This matter too is expected to be heard today. Late yesterday afternoon, large numbers of public order police systematically pushed students back from the parliamentary precinct.
We are warning you in terms of the regulations of Gatherings Act. You need to leave the CBD of Cape Town.
There were 10 standoffs as police moved in to disperse the crowd. Rocks and bottles were hurled at police while several people were taken into custody. Students at a residence at CPUT, not far from Parliament, say police also used force at the residence.
All the students from all the universities, they came inside And then there's fired guns and everything, like grenades and everything, and they tear gases. And other students ran out inside the building. Outside and inside and up there on top.
Last night, 23 students were released from the Cape Town police station, while 6 others remained in custody in Bellville.
There are allegations as well that are going about that this is the Hawks that have arrested them and they are going to face charges of treason. We want to refute those allegations. These students, I'm quite sure they will likely to face charges of trespassing as well as that of public violence if it goes that far. And as the Hawks, we are not involved in any issues of crime prevention. That is a police SABC function, and we really want to condemn whoever is fueling these allegations to the public.
It's not clear when the students will appear in court. Carmel Lochenberg-Roberts, SABC News, Cape Town.
Now, what's your reaction to the students in Parliament or at the doorstep of Parliament yesterday demanding to speak to the Minister to get his take on the Fees Must Fall campaign? You can let us know what's on your mind on that on the Twitter handle at SABC Newsroom. Now, several students have been arrested during a confrontation with police at the Mahikeng campus of the Northwest University. Police used rubber bullets and stun grenades to disperse students who were blocking the university entrance with burning tires and stones.
The Fees Must Fall campaign taking an ugly turn. Police and students in a violent confrontation. Scores have been injured and several more have been arrested.
Their duty is to protect us, but at the same time they are now being aggressive against us.
Several buildings in the university have been vandalized and looted. Students here are opposed to the university's proposed fee hikes.
What we want is 0 fee increment for the academic year 2016. Whether it's 6%, 3%, 2% or 0.5%, we don't accept it.
The university could not be reached for comment. Students at this campus are resolute. They maintain they'll stop at nothing until their demands are met. They insist the fee increments will have dire consequences for both returning and prospective students. Selo Tatai, SABC News, Mahikeng.
The ANC will meet with youth and students leaders to discuss the ongoing Fees Must Fall campaign that has hit the universities across the country. Yesterday, students took their demands to Parliament. The governing party says it is concerned about the latest development that resulted in protesting students invading Parliament's premises. The ANC says it believes the situation could have been handled differently. Spokesperson Zizi Kodwa for the ANC has called for calm and for police to exercise restraint. Chairperson of the Standing Committee on Appropriations, Paul Mashatile, says that the Finance Minister Nhlanhla Nene's mini-budget was balanced, given the current economic conditions in the country. Opposition parties have, in the meanwhile, expressed disappointment at Nene's medium-term budget policy statement. They have criticized Nene for not responding in detail to the wave of university student protests against the planned tuition fee increases. The minister's speech included a mixture of tax hikes, austerity plans, and even retrenchments in the public sector over the next 3 years. Nene announced that government had to slash the economic growth forecast for this year. The decline follows the worsening global economic environment, which continues to impact negatively on the South African economy. He says that tax increases, including VAT, is inevitable. Minister Nene also dropped a bombshell when he announced that the wage agreement that was reached with the public sector unions earlier this year has put government finances under pressure. The minister will announce in his February budget next year which taxes will go up and by how much. Now, Eben will speak to Professor Parsons a little bit later on that particular issue. Now, for the latest on the students' fees protest, let's now cross to the union buildings where our presidential correspondent, Zwandile Mbeje, is standing by. But Eben will take you there. Eben, a very good morning.
Yeah, very good morning to you, Elvis. Yes, we've got developing story, special announcement the Presidency is making here today. I think let's go directly to the presidential correspondent, Mzwandile Mbeche. He's standing by with the Presidency. Very good morning to you, Zwai. Just before you go into the interview, just set the scene of this announcement.
Thank you very much, Eben, and a very good morning to our viewers. As you know, that this issue is very topical in the country. Students really demanding that there should be no increment on their fees. We have seen what happened in Parliament yesterday. We have seen what happened across the country. And of course, we know that today the governing party, the ANC, will be meeting some of the student leaders to try and resolve this issue. But of interest is that we have just got a statement from the President who has confirmed that he will be meeting the students. But to tell us more about that, with me I have the presidential spokesperson, Bongani Majola. Good morning, Bongani. We've just received a statement from the President that he'll be meeting student leaders. Just tell us more.
Well, I can confirm that President Zuma will meet the student leadership, representative of students, as well as university management tomorrow here at the Union Buildings to discuss a possible solution to the current impasse regarding student fees. The President really sympathizes with the students, and as you will recall that even in the January 8 statement, already the ruling party had voiced its concern about the escalating cost of university education, and that it was quickly becoming some sort of exclusion for poor black students. So the President really will be discussing this to find a solution as speedily as possible to the impasse.
So will we see this as a follow-up to the meeting that the President had with Vice-Chancellors and the chairpersons of university councils a few weeks ago?
Absolutely. You remember that also a task team has been established to look specifically into the model of funding, but to short-term solution to the student funding in the country.
Thank you very much. There you have it. You've heard it from the highest office. The issues that are affecting the students have really found their way right here. So the President is very serious about addressing this issue. So he will indeed find time to meet the students. But I may just indicate that we are here at the Union Buildings today. It's a very important occasion. Today, the President of Mozambique will be visiting South Africa on a state visit. President Zuma went to Mozambique in May this year on the same. So these countries are strengthening their relations. You know that relations between these two countries are already very high. If you look at trade volumes, actually Mozambique is the biggest trading partner of South Africa. South Africa exports about 32 billion of exports to Mozambique, and of course we get about 11 billion worth of goods from Mozambique. So this shows that this relationship is really growing. But what they have decided to do is that the arrangement or the structured relations that exist between these two countries need to be elevated. So what will happen today is that there will be a binational commission. So a binational commission which will meet every year. So a binational commission will mean that every year, either this year or that year, so one of these countries will hold discussions relating to the economic cooperation. And you know that recently Mozambique has actually discovered huge gas deposits off the coast of Maputo. So looking at the country like us, South Africa, which is still struggling with the issues of energy, so you can see we can tap into that market, despite the fact that already about 300 companies of our country are already doing business in Mozambique. So other than trade, you know that the movement between these countries and the proximity makes it necessary that these countries work together. So later on today, in about 45 minutes, the official state visit will begin. And you'd know that President Filipe Nyusi was elected last year after the previous president, President Gebuza, had finished his 2 terms. So you can see that this relationship is starting, just months after President Zuma had gone to Mozambique. So President Nyusi is here. I can also remind you that last month in September, President Zuma was in Mozambique to unveil the monument. You remember the Matula raid, where the MK people or the MK soldiers who had hidden in what was known as safe houses were raided by apartheid forces from South Africa, where a number of people died. So President Zuma and President Nyusi last month went there to unveil this important monument. So you can see that when they're talking relations, it's not an issue of just talking, but they are trying to implement whatever is happening. You would know that it would be very important for South Africa as well, because South Africa has got a lot of expertise, and Mozambique can tap into that, especially because there's a lot of backlog that they need to do. Yeah. So the construction in that country is booming, and I can just add, Mozambique is actually one of the fastest growing countries on the continent and indeed in the world. So with relations growing, South Africa stands to benefit a lot. It's back to the studio.
Thank you very much, Mzwandile Mbeje. That is our presidential correspondent coming to you live from the Union Buildings. We'll be live at around 10 o'clock this morning to have a look at the relations between the country and this bilateral meeting. But we carry on and we look at, well, continued student protests. Now, 6 of the students arrested in the Cape Town CBD last night following disruptive protests are due to appear in the local magistrates court this morning. They will appear alongside 23 others who have been released. Other charges include contraventions in terms of the Gathering Act and trespassing. Now, for the latest on this case, let's cross to our journalist, Abra Barbia in Cape Town. A very good morning to you, Abra. Thank you for joining us.
Good morning, Yeben.
Abra, just give us the latest there with regards to court proceedings this morning.
Yeah, but okay, so we are dealing with 2 separate but connected cases. First of all, the latest on the 23 who are appearing in this court right now, Court 13 at the Cape Town Magistrates Court. They've all just appeared. Their case it's standing down till around 11 o'clock. What the lawyers inside said is, now remember, these are the 23 who were released last night. Yeah. Their case is likely to be postponed till a later stage. But what the lawyers said inside is they are looking for a way to combine the cases of the 23 with that of the 6 who have been kept separately. Reports coming in remain very, very conflicting at the moment. We have the police insisting that high treason is not on the charge sheet of those 6. However, various lawyers representing those 6 are insisting that high treason is in fact on the charge sheet. Now what's so important about the charge of high treason is that high treason is associated with the violent overthrow of a state. We did not see that happening yesterday, but we are hoping to get an update at about 10:30 as to what exactly is happening with that charge of high treason. You know, yesterday the Hawks disputed that was one of the charges, but as I've mentioned, the lawyers of those accused are still insisting that is in fact on the charge sheet. I'm hoping to speak to Lawson Naidu, of the Council for the Advancement of the Constitution. He's going to help us to unpack exactly what happened yesterday, and in terms of the Constitution, in terms of the kind of force used, whether that was appropriate. He's making his way to me. We seem to have lost Lawson right now, but the kids have all come out of court. They are supposed to go back in at 11 o'clock. I've also heard reports that more students are making their way to Parliament. I have Lawson with me right now. Lawson, thank you so much for joining us. You're representing CASAC today. You try to explain to me exactly constitutionally what went down yesterday. Somebody says that the People's Parliament, people should have access to Parliament. What's your take on it?
Well, I think it was a legitimate protest that was conducted by students protesting against high university tuition fees and tertiary education fees. I think this was a legitimate process. It is very unfortunate that this protest has now been criminalized, that students engaged in that demonstration have been charged and face prosecution here in the Magistrates Court today. I think we need to be a more responsible society and take heed of the the concerns that the students have raised, which are very legitimate concerns, and I think they reflect the frustration of broader society about the failure of government to deliver on key socio-economic rights for the people of South Africa.
Also, just briefly, rumours of high treason. We have no confirmation from the SAPs. They're denying it. Lawyers, however, for the 6 are insisting that that is on the charge sheet. Is high treason a legitimate charge at this point?
Well, I think if there is such a charge of high treason being made, then it makes a mockery of this whole process. This was a demonstration by young people. There was no threat to the state. Yes, the protest took place outside Parliament, but it is because the students have been seeking to engage with the political leadership of the country to try and find a resolution to this. And it is the failure of political leadership to engage with the students that has created the conditions for this to take place.
Lawson, thank you so much for your time. Well, Eben, there you have a breakdown of that. As I mentioned earlier, I have heard reports that more students are making their way to Parliament. So we will definitely keep in touch with you, stay in touch with you, and we'll try to find out exactly what is happening. Eben?
Thank you very much, Abra. Just quickly tell us, students are going to back on the way to Parliament. They're not joining these young people that are in court today.
Yeah, but I'm not sure if I heard you correctly. I've heard reports of students making their way to Parliament. Earlier on, when I did get to work, I was informed by SAPs at Parliament that they received intel that more students would be coming to protest. I mean, that is what they promised us yesterday. But at the moment, it seems like we do have 2 separate groups. We have the 23 students with their supporters who appeared in court earlier on. They are going back in at 11 o'clock. And then we have the other crowd apparently making their way to Parliament. But I'll have to gather more information on that to confirm it to you.
Thank you very much, Abra. We'll be back with Abra a little bit later in the show. They've got a packed show for you today. Now, we move on. Free tertiary education, a comprehensive social security plan, national health insurance and accelerated land reforms. These were just a few of the items on the national shopping list which Finance Minister Nhlanhla Nene had to address yesterday amidst protesting students disrupting the proceedings when he tabled his medium-term budget policy statement. Nene told MPs that the rapid increases in the cost of debt payments are starting to impact spending on social and economic priorities. The main goal over the 3-year budget cycle is to stabilise the increase in government debt. This year alone, government will be spending close to 130 billion rand on debt servicing costs, and revenue is set to decline by 7.6 billion rand. Now, for some analysis on the mini-budget, we are joined in our parliamentary studios in Cape Town by Professor Raymond Parsons from the Northwest University Business School. Professor Parsons, very good morning to you.
Good morning to you.
Just your reaction to the mini-budget off the bat, Professor Parsons.
Well, it might have been called a mini-budget, but it had some important events and a major message from the Minister of Finance yesterday that although we have important socio-economic priorities in South Africa, and we saw this again with the student protests about the fees, the fact is that we're in a low-growth trap at the moment, as the Minister indicated, of only growing at 1.5%. And unless we can get that growth rate up, we cannot address the issues of jobs, poverty, and above all, the tax revenues and the resources that we need to fund all the important things that you've already listed, whether it's the national health or whether it's a security plan for everyone. All these things will have to be prioritized because we've now reached a stage in our budgeting where it's not a question of doing this and that. It's doing this or that. And these are tough decisions. They are not easy decisions. And I think that came through very clearly in the mini-budget speech, that we expect the government will have to now cut its coat according to its cloth. And at a 1.5% growth rate, we have trade-offs and some tough decisions to make. And that really was the basic message which the Minister of Finance tried to put over in his mini-budget speech yesterday.
Decline in tax revenue didn't leave the minister much room to manoeuvre. How do you think he managed to balance the scales yesterday?
Well, I think he's been quite creative in being able to manage where we are now, in the sense that if you look at the limits on government spending, which have been maintained, the fact that he's been able to keep the total debt as a ratio of the gross domestic product below 50%, that means that he's managing the situation. But there are a number of uncertainties in the situation, not just the global economy, but also whether we can grow at even 1.5% next year. And this doesn't lie entirely in his hands. It's fine for the Treasury to manage these numbers, but at the end of the day, a number of the issues and factors that affect economic growth and therefore the tax revenues lie in a team effort by government. In other words, by the decisions that other ministers take, whether it's on nuclear power or whether it's on visa requirements or on land reform, all these issues feed into our growth performance. So at the end of the day, he's saying, this is what I can do as the Minister of Finance, but I will need the support of my colleagues to make this growth happen. And also, of course, at the end of the day, it's a collective effort on the part of the country as a whole to help implement our National Development Plan, which after all is intended to give us the growth which will give us a bigger, stronger and better economy in the years ahead. So that's really the underlying message that, and the tough message that comes out of the mini budget speech.
The number 1.5% growth, that's the number that stands out for everybody. What does that mean in economic terms for the man in the street in the next budget cycle?
It simply means that we are in a very tight fit here, a tight fit for government and a tight fit for indeed the nation at large. This country can do so much better. I mean, the target in the National Development Plan ultimately is 5.4%, and by 2019 we had hoped a year or two ago to be growing at 5%. That's the gap that we have to close. That is what we need to drive by becoming more competitive, by spending wisely by government, and we've got to understand that unless we can get the growth rate up, we will not be able to afford all the good things we want and what we want to do in order to create a better life for all. We've got to get this economy moving, we've got to get the growth rate up, and until we do that, the Minister of Finance is in a straitjacket.
Professor Parsons, I thank you very much for your contribution today. That's economist of the Northwest University Business School, Professor Raymond Parsons, giving his views on the mini-budget, as it's now being called, that was delivered by Finance Minister Nhlanhla Nene in Parliament yesterday. Well, now to take a look at what's happening on social media, and it's been plenty of it going on. Anine is standing by. Very good morning to you, Anine. Thanks for being with us. Just give us a quick outlook. What is happening? I understand that there are conflicting reports on social media, students reporting around high treason charges and so forth. What is Twitter saying?
At this moment, there still is that, Eben, but I can tell you that the number one trending topic this morning is the Johannesburg shutdown and the UJ shutdown. And this, as the Johannesburg students or the UJ students in Auckland Park have now joined the Fees Must Fall movement that we've been seeing going on Twitter. That is actually a photo we took from Twitter of one of the posters that the students have been using this morning at the campus. That's the hashtag you can follow as well. Twitter has shown us that this protest has been gaining momentum this morning. We can also show you the tweet that was tweeted by the SRC at the Auckland Park campus last night, and this has called on all the UJ students to gather at the Rag Farm from 3 o'clock today, Eben. But like these photos on Twitter are indicating, students have already started gathering. This photo is from the campus this morning. That's what students are holding up. My mom sold her house for my education, hashtag UJ shutdown. Some legitimate concerns coming from the students there this morning. This is the group gathering at the Auckland Park campus. So we see that crowd is growing over there. And then we also saw a tweet of security, UJ beefing up security to make sure that there isn't any incidents of violence breaking out this morning, Eben. But then, Eben, to go back to your concerns around what exactly is being said, especially on Twitter around the high treason charges, there was earlier it was reported as breaking news that the 6 UCT students who did appear in court have been charged with assault, contravening the National Key Points Act, and treason. So not there a mention of high treason, but this is something that we're going to have to clarify and confirm.
Yeah, we're waiting for Abra Babia in Cape Town. That's our parliamentary reporter. She will let us know. She said at around 10:30 today what the official charge sheet is. Of course, 6 more students are in court there right now. She was also speaking to Logan Naidu a little bit earlier. But just to go back now, police used stun grenades to disperse hundreds of protesting students, if you've missed it, who stormed the Parliament precinct in Cape Town yesterday to try and disrupt Finance Minister Nhlanhla Nene's interim budget speech and force a meeting with Higher Education Minister Blade Nzimande. Here you see some of the scenes. Now, we can tell you that several people were injured in the chaos. 6 were arrested, 23 others with them. They will appear in court today. Here you see some of these disturbing scenes that were happening inside of the parliamentary precinct this after students made their way through a gate. There have been varied responses and reaction on social media. Here you see some of the pictures and memes that people have been putting on, trying to make a correlation between 1976 and today. What are your views on this? Well, we ask you that as our question of the day. What are your views on this? Send us your reaction. Students storm Parliament, fees must fall campaign, same struggle, different generation, they say. Here you see those were some real chaotic scenes outside, well, within the Parliament precinct, really. Tear gas, stun grenades and the like. Here you see students gearing up for the Fees Must Fall campaign and the hashtag National Shutdown campaign to close universities to get their way. There you see that incident where the gates of Parliament were stormed yesterday. That one from Mabine Siabi earlier today. The youth took their plight to Parliament and were met with force. Now, our question of the day to you is: students storm Parliament. No, that's not our question of the day. That was the one yesterday. Students storm Parliament. We want to hear your reaction. Tell us what you think. And my question to you is, would this happen anywhere else in the world? And if so, what kind of measures would be taken in any other country if Parliament was set upon, as we saw yesterday? There's the question of the day. Students storm Parliament, your reaction. Time for us to take a break. We'll be back with Newsroom shortly.
SABC brings to you Rugby World Cup 2015.
For victory requires intense effort and teamwork. When you get to it, there is no turning back, because all eyes are on you. When it's action time, nothing should stand in your way. Sports Live tackles and analyzes all the sport action. This is the home of all your sport news, updates and more. Sports Live weekdays at 8:30 p.m.
Welcome back. You're still with Newsroom now. The National Tertiary Education Union has joined the call for what they call exorbitant university fees to be scrapped. The union believes that the regulation of fees needs to be a top priority for government, as the student fee crisis will cripple universities across the country. Now, to talk to us about this, we are joined from Port Elizabeth by the General Secretary of the National Tertiary Education Union, Mr. Grant Abbott. A very good morning to you, Mr. Abbott. Thank you for joining us.
Good morning, Eben, and good morning to your viewers.
I just want to tell you also with you today in our parliamentary studios in Cape Town, we have the Chief Whip of the Portfolio Committee of Higher Education, Mr. Danny Kekana. Very good morning to you, Mr. Kekana. I want to start with you. Just give us your reaction to the scenes that we saw in the parliamentary precinct yesterday.
Well, we are a bit upset that things nearly got out of control, but fortunately, we didn't have major injuries. I mean, if you compare this to the past student upheavals where 76, there were deaths same time, people being killed, including Hector Peterson.
It's quite
soft,
at
least, relatively speaking, yesterday was much more controlled, better controlled.
Thank you.
And minimum force was used.
What do you say to that, and what's your reaction in general then, as the Tertiary Education Union, Mr. Abbott?
Eben, I think yesterday's scenes left us very shell-shocked. Just overall, what we saw is a government that seemed to be very heavy-handed with students. I understand sometimes in the heat of the moment you need to respond in some sense, but we really can't be okay with what we saw. It was disturbing, and it really hits to the hearts of much greater problems in higher education, in actual fact, in social, economic, transformational issues.
Mr. Abbott, I want to ask you this question, and it's a sort of international benchmarking question. You talk about heavy-handedness. There were very few injuries, if any serious ones, at Parliament yesterday. If students or any group stormed Parliament in any other country in the world, what do you think the reaction would have been, and how can you compare that to what happened yesterday?
Eben, I'm not sure how any other country would respond, but we have to look particularly in our situation and in our nation. And if we look at the last, say, 2 to 3 years of protest action and how things have gone throughout the country, what we're seeing is a government that isn't taking leadership. What we're seeing is a government that has been reactionary more than being proactive in looking for solutions. If we understand that whole construct, I think we can better understand what was happening yesterday. So I get what you're saying. I suppose other countries might respond similarly, but it's a difficult one for us to say, you know, we're okay with it. What we certainly can't be is we can't be gloating. We can't be saying, you know, well done to Parliament security. We have to say it is very, very unfortunate that that had to have happened.
If I can get back to the Chief Whip in Parliament, Mr. Kekana, we've seen these fees, these increments that have been put forward now. Now, suddenly, the blame has been shifted to government. Do you agree that government is responsible for these increases that have been put forward? Or do we have to look at universities who have put forward a rate almost double that of the current inflation?
Well, one correction, I'm not Chief Whip, I'm Whip of the Portfolio Committee of Higher Education.
Thank you.
Because Chief Whip is there, ANC Chief Whip is there. Well, no, it isn't correct that government must be to blame, because universities with their autonomy has the right to, I mean, they are the ones that determine the increase and what percentage it must take. That is why they differ from one university. Some are 10 on average, others 11%, others 15%. So it isn't true that it is government. That has been a decision of universities out of their own autonomy.
Thank you. Now, Mr. Abbott, I'd like you to respond to that, because it's so easy to lay blame at the door of government. Government done this, government done that, and we have to attack the government because of that. But the reality is autonomous universities have decided on above inflation increases, which have brought us to this point. Yes. Your reaction to that?
I think firstly we need to understand that government funding to universities has been decreasing year on year in real terms. As a result, the universities, to keep their programs running, need to get their funding from some other stream. Third stream income, as it's traditionally called, is just not sufficient. So the other significant funding stream income is student fees. To make up the gap and the difference between what government is giving and what they require to what universities are required to provide, they have to constantly increase the student fees. The reality is that the entire funding model and funding formula that we see for higher education at the moment is actually not working. And I think that the task team that the President announced a few weeks ago needs to speed up its work, and we need to, we've asked for a seat on that task team. We need to seriously look at how serious are we about spending on education, because as a government, and in fact as every stakeholder, we need to put our heads together and come up with a solution to that.
I want to talk to you about that. I also want to point out that 20 cents out of every rand of our entire budget goes to education. It is a massive investment. But I want to conclude this discussion by asking both of you, what is an amicable and sustainable solution from here on going forward? Mr. Kekana, if I can start with you.
I can't hear you.
I think what is sustainable, like a lot of people say, is that when our economy's growth improves, that will at least increase our tax base and will be able to contribute more onto education. The other thing is that I think private sector must also come on board, because a lot of international countries, democracies, are using both government and private sector to fund education. I don't think government is going to cope solely on its own, but private sector must also, especially because private sector is in charge of the economy. It must also contribute, like the minister said, to this tertiary education, because in turn they get their beneficiaries.
Thank you, Mr. Kekana. And I thank you for joining us, Mr. Kekana, who is the whip of the Portfolio Committee on Higher Education. Thank you very much. I'm going to conclude with you, Mr. Abbott in Port Elizabeth. You couldn't hear me earlier. I understand the problems have been fixed. You can hear me. Just tell me, what is the solution going forward?
Sorry, Eben, it was very soft there. I think there's two things. Firstly, we have to do whatever is necessary right now to end the current crisis, whatever that may be. If that means for this current year, government funds everything, then we must find the money to do that. And get students back to classes from tomorrow already. We're running out of valuable time in this academic year. In the sustainable going forward, we need to get together as a society, we need to get together as that task team and relook at what is the long-term solution in terms of funding for higher education, and how strong is that priority and that commitment to education going forward.
Grant Abbott, I thank you very much for joining us. That's the General Secretary of the National Tertiary Education Union. He came to us live from Port Elizabeth. Of course, we're discussing the current crisis within tertiary institutions around South Africa, as you've seen the pictures throughout our broadcast so far. Disturbing stun grenades and the like in and around Parliament's precinct yesterday. 29 students in court this morning. I can tell you, the University of Johannesburg is now the latest addition to the nationwide student protest. This comes a week after Wits University started its Fees Must Fall campaign. The hashtag has gone around the country, and all universities seem to be in on it now. The UJ shut down, as you see these pictures coming in from the Auckland Park campus. These protests are happening on and around Empire Road here in and around Auckland Park, which is quite close to where the SABC is this morning. Let's take a look at some of the tweets around this. The Joburg shutdown is counterproductive. It affects the very source of our economy that funds fees, taxpayers, says Ntobisi. Then Pumi Matlangu says, Joburg shutdown, here's to protecting the legacy of our youth and our children's children. Knowledge is not a commodity and should not be sold, says Pumi. A pickle and some nuts. Let our metropolitans come to a standstill while the voices of youth are heard today. Joburg shutdown, fees must fall, national shutdown. These have been the hashtags doing the rounds. An injustice to one is an injustice to all, says Pumi Mahlangu. Then Bongs talks about the government will one day regret that they failed to address the socio-economic challenges faced by underprivileged people. These are some of the views of viewers and the like on social media, not the views of us here at SABC. We want your views. Student Storm Parliament, that was yesterday. Pictures, we want your reaction. Please send us your reaction. We'll have it in later. The show will look at it and we'll have a discussion around it. Time for us to take a break. When we come back, we'll speak to Professor Ben Chirok about his book, and the timing is just about perfect. See you then. Welcome back. You're watching Newsroom here on SABC News. Now, this week alone, we have seen South Africans call for transformation in our tertiary institutions, but from the statue debate earlier this year to strikes in the mining sector, the advancement of black South Africans in ownership and management, and policies around the implementation of BEE, or Black Economic Empowerment, it is clear South Africa is still seeking change in many political and economic sectors. So if you have an interest in law and politics, South Africa's political economy and the processes of policy making in Parliament, well, then the latest book release called Changing the Colour of Capital is definitely a must-read for you. The book is edited by Professor Ben Chirok. It's a compilation of essays by leaders like Trevor Manuel, Rob Davies, Jeremy Cronin, and Professor Ben Chirok himself. Many other game changers in politics and economics have also made contributions. The book addresses basic questions on transformation in South Africa today. Professor Ben Chirok joins us live from Cape Town this morning. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you.
The timing of your book is very, very much on point. I want to start, and there's no way that we can talk about your book without talking about the events of the last 24 hours. Can I ask you to give us your views on what has transpired and what has brought us to this point that we saw yesterday?
Let me first say, I want to dedicate this book to the students. I have great admiration for the students of South Africa. I think they're standing up for freedom, and this is the book I want to dedicate to them. So one of the reasons, let me say that the protests that have taken place are the result of a failure of both government and the university institutions to negotiate sensibly with the students. I think the universities have made a huge mistake by going to the courts, by relying on the police, instead of dealing with these matters the way an employer would deal with labor issues. When there's a strike in a factory or in a mine, you negotiate and you go to negotiate and you continue in trying to create goodwill and a compromise. You do not go to the police. If you go to the police, you create a new atmosphere. When you charge students with treason, as we're told in Cape Town, you're escalating the whole struggle into a major political battle instead of dealing with an internal problem of fees. And so I think the authorities, both of government and the universities, have escalated this. They're provoking the students, and they will pay a price for that.
Let's quickly go back to your book, Changing the Color of Capital. What is the premise? What's the message that you would like people to take out of this book once they've gone cover to cover?
Well, you know, the debate at the University of Cape Town and other universities is a call for decolonizing the universities. And that is, in a way, the theme of my book. What does decolonizing mean? Does it mean changing black faces for white faces? Black business people for white business people? Is that what decolonizing means? And the book shows that it's not as simple as that. In Africa, African business people and leaders replaced British and French leaders. And that did not decolonize Africa. And by merely changing the color of capital, we will not decolonize South Africa. We need to understand what decolonization means, and fundamentally, it's a question of political economy and of political power. So the book analyzes our political economy, it analyzes the political system, it looks at Parliament, it looks at the judiciary, at the executive, at the public service, it looks at all the institutions of the state, how it operates in the process of transformation. So we're not just talking about removing color discrimination.
Yeah.
We're talking about changing the system.
Professor, that brings us to a question that is starting to be asked around let's call it the intellectual halls of South Africa. Has democracy and capitalism and the two together, has it worked for South Africa since well, in the last 20 years? And is it a tool that builds inequality rather than the dreams of what we saw 20 years ago?
Well, I have no doubt that democracy has done a great deal. If you look at Parliament, it is almost all black. If you look at our public service, it is very black. If you look at the army, police, and so on, all the institutions of the state, these are now no longer enclaves of white power. So you've got black power in the public service, in Parliament and elsewhere, and that's the result of democracy. And we must thank Mandela and the ANC for having done that. But we have not changed capitalism, and we have not changed the way capital works. And that's why this book is about political economy, which is how the politics and the economics mesh together into a system in which the poor are supposed to be liberated from economic deprivation so that their children can go to university, etc. And the outcome of our system is that the position of the poor has not changed fundamentally. That is the issue before us, and that's what the book discusses.
Is this a question that our freedom has become unfreedom?
Well, it's a mixture. And here I am on SABC, whereas under apartheid I would not be here. And so I welcome that. And you would not be there. So these are victories which we must recognize. At the same time, we have to deplore the huge unemployment, the poverty, the fact that our youth can't get jobs, the fact that our students, even when they graduate, are unemployed. These are very serious issues for the country. So, you know, there are gains and there are losses. And we need to look at both in a systematic and a balanced way.
Professor, in conclusion, where can we find your book? Where can the man in the street get hold of a copy of your book?
In all the main bookshops, they will get it. Otherwise, they can get it from me at my institute, the Institute for African Alternatives, which is in Cape Town. And if you like, my email is newagenda01@gmail.com. newagenda01@gmail.com. Please buy the book. Not to make me rich, it won't. Books are loss-making enterprises, but because I want to be understood, and I want, particularly the students, I want the students to read the book, which is why I dedicate it to them, to help them understand their own condition far better. That's my objective.
Professor, I thank you for joining us. I think your book is a very important book, not just for students, but for all South Africans to read right now for where we are and to kind of roadmap where we need to go in the next decade. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
That's Professor Ben Turok, one of the finest minds here in South Africa. Well, time's moving on. Time for us to take a look at, well, what the weather is going to do for the next 24 hours or so.
SABC brings to you Rugby World Cup 2015.
Let's do this.
It's 10:00 hours Central Africa time on the 22nd of October 2015. Jumbo Africa, and a very warm welcome to the second hour. This is Newsroom. I'm Elvis Preston. I'll be with you until 12 o'clock. You have to stay with us as we broadcast live from our Auckland Park studios in Johannesburg to the rest of the African continent. Let's now take a look at all your headlines. President Jacob Zuma will meet with student leaders at the Union buildings in Pretoria tomorrow. Western Cape High Court in Cape Town to hear an urgent application by parents of protesting students about the protest yesterday. Opposition parties have, in the meanwhile, expressed disappointment at the Finance Minister Nhlanhla Nene's medium-term budget policy statement. Now, those are all your headlines, but coming up in sports, here's Kendall Makamate. Very good morning.
Good morning, Elvis. Quite a lot happening in sports, as always, and good morning to you at home as well. Now, coming up in sports in a short while, Bidvest Wits shoot to the top of the Absa Premiership after an own goal by Pirates keeper Obono gives them the win in Orlando. And Manchester City grab a win at the death as United get away with a draw in Moscow. Springbok coach Hanneke Meyer talks up the New Zealand team as the best ever to play the game. And that, in a nutshell, was coming up in your sports at 10:20. So make sure you stick around for that. Back to you, Elvis.
Thank you, Kendall. Let's now take a look at your top story this hour. The Presidency says President Jacob Zuma will meet with student leaders at the Union buildings in Pretoria tomorrow. The meeting comes after students marched to Parliament yesterday to demand a zero increase in the proposed 2016 tuition fees.
I can confirm that President Zuma will meet the student leadership, representative of student, as well as university management tomorrow here at the Union buildings to discuss a possible solution to the current impasse regarding student fees. The President really sympathizes with the students, and as you will recall that even in the January 8 statement, already the ruling party had voiced its concern about the escalating cost of university education, and that it was quickly becoming some sort of exclusion for poor black students. So the President really will be discussing this to find a solution as speedily as possible to the impasse.
Arrested in the Cape Town CBD last night following disruptive protests are due to appear in the local magistrate's court this morning. They will appear alongside 23 others who have been released. Meanwhile, an urgent application will continue in the Western Cape High Court in Cape Town today. Parents of the protesting students have brought the case against the police for their alleged heavy-handedness.
A tense day of running battles between irate students and public order police. Students are now calling on the court to protect them, and their claims of being manhandled by police officers have forced them to seek justice. Judgment in the matter is expected today.
What we will be doing later on is to lead actual evidence from some of the student protesters. They'll be detailing the rights violations that they faced, and the state attorney council on behalf of the Minister of Police will have an opportunity to lead evidence from their side, of course, and to put before the judge why they believe an order is not warranted or should not be granted.
Concerned parents too are part of the urgent application.
I got shoved and pushed around by police. I saw the same with others. And I then thought, this is impossible. And we called the Legal Resource Center, and we thought it's necessary to discuss the possibility of a restraining order on the police.
Meanwhile, the Cape Peninsula University of Technology has also approached the court for an urgent interdict to prevent students from unlawfully occupying any portion of its premises. This matter too is expected to be heard today. Late yesterday afternoon, large numbers of public order police systematically pushed students back from the parliamentary precinct.
We are warning you in terms of the regulations of Gatherings Act. You need to leave the CBD of Cape Town.
There were 10 standoffs as police moved in to disperse the crowd. Rocks and bottles were hurled at police while several people were taken into custody. Students at a residence at CPUT, not far from Parliament, say police also used force at the residence.
All the students from all the universities, they came inside and then just fired guns and everything, like grenades and everything, and they tear gases. And other students ran out inside the building. Outside and inside and up there on top.
Last night, 23 students were released from the Cape Town police station, while 6 others remained in custody in Bellville.
There are allegations as well that are going about that the Hawks that have arrested them and they are going to face charges of treason. We want to refute those allegations. These students, I'm quite sure they will likely to face charges of trespassing as well as that of public violence if it goes that far. And as the Hawks, we are not involved in any issues of crime prevention. That is a police SAPS function, and we really want to condemn whoever is fueling these allegations to the public.
It's not clear when the students will appear in court. Carmel Lochenberg-Roberts, SABC News, Cape Town.
Police have denied using excessive force in yesterday's clash with the students in Cape Town. About 73 people have been arrested countrywide as students heeded the call for a national shutdown. The majority of them in Maikeng in the Northwest Province and Cape Town.
A directive was issued by the National Joint Operational Intelligence Structure indicating to our members, particularly from public order police, that they should use force only when necessary. And we are satisfied that the force that was used yesterday was within the prescribed force and it was necessary.
University Deputy Vice Chancellor Professor Tawana Cooper says they're trying to organize a meeting with the students. He says they want to discuss the way forward since the Minister Nzamande's announcement that the proposed increase to the 2016 tuition fees has been capped at 6%. Now, for the latest developments at Wits University, we cross live to our reporter Makhetla Moshlabe. Makhetla, very good morning to you once again. And can you tell us what is the situation at Wits right now?
Good morning, Elvis. Thanks so much indeed. Well, I can tell you that this morning it has been chilled. I mean, we arrived here at around 7 o'clock in the morning, and the students, of course, have been, coming in one by one to show that there would be some action today. We also managed to speak to some that were, studying, that had, slept here overnight, just to get the sense of, how they're preparing themselves for this particular protest. What they're telling me is that they will be protesting in solidarity with the students that were arrested in Cape Town yesterday after that chaotic scenes outside the gates of Parliament. But what I can tell you at this point in time is that it's a very chilled morning here at Wits. Unusual, of course, Wits students, because by this time, you would expect them to be singing, to be dancing right here, the Great Hall steps.
Now, has the university management met with the students already, or is there any indication that they will?
Well, there is an indication that they will meet with the students, but I spoke to some of the student leaders from SRC saying that they're not very much, interested in whatever the management is going to be saying, because they say the only thing they want from the management is to hear them say we will not, put that 6% cap increase into effect for next year. Remember, this 6% increase cap was announced by the minister.
Unfortunately, Makhetla, that's where we got to leave it, because right now President Jacob Zuma and his Mozambican counterpart Filipe Nyusi will today hold those bilateral talks in Pretoria. The development of the gas industry to increase South Africa's energy capacity and to stimulate job creation will be high on the agenda. Nyusi is on his first state visit to South Africa since assuming office in January this year. Let's go there live.
Good one. Good one.
And ready.
A very warm welcome to Pretoria. The official ceremony of the state visit of the President of Mozambique, Filipe Nyusi, has begun. As you can see, the 21 Gun salute has happened. The national anthems are happening now. So it's the very important visit that is happening here. The President of Mozambique is inspecting the Guard of Honor, so it is in honor of his state visit. He has just been recently elected. He was elected in October last year, 2014. President Zuma earlier this year, in May to be specific, went to Mozambique on the state visit. So this is a reciprocal state visit. It really shows that relations are really growing between these two neighbors. Already, Mozambique is South Africa's biggest trading partner on the African continent. You see the salute there, meeting his counterpart, President Jacob Zuma, and then they'll be introducing the various ministers. It's a very important relationship, South Africa and Mozambique, as you know, that even during the struggle days, these two countries helped each other very, very much. You'd recall that last month, South Africa went to Mozambique to unveil the Matola Monument, where many of South Africans were killed by the apartheid agents. We await the national anthems of the two countries. The President is introducing his members of cabinet to the President of Mozambique, President Nyusi. The First Minister on the line is Minister of DERCO. And then, of course, our ambassador to Mozambique, Mr. Mandisi Mpahlwa, is here because the country that he's the ambassador to is the one visiting the country. So he is here. We can see the tourism minister there, Minister Hanegom, and then various other ministers, ministers of labor, of communications, of transport, and various other deputy ministers. And I can see the Minister of Communications, yes, Minister Faith Mutambi, Minister of Police, Minister Natin Sego, and the Deputy Minister of COGTA there, and now. So you can see the number of ministers and deputy ministers that have come. Indeed, South Africa wants to show that it's serious with its relationship with Mozambique, being the biggest trading partner, as we indicated earlier on. And it's actually very interesting because in some countries the language tends to be a barrier. You know that Mozambique, by and large, from the colonial times, would be a Portuguese-speaking country, and then South Africa would be an English-speaking country. Of course, I'm not talking about our vernaculars. You'd know the Shangans in Mozambique, and there's also the Shangans here in South Africa, or the Tsonga. So those are related. So basically, this relationship is very strong. So the fact that others may have been colonized by the Portuguese, others by the British, doesn't really stop that kind of good relations. As President Zuma converses with Deputy Minister of Labour, Inkosi, particularly Holomisa, introducing him to President Nyusi of Mozambique. So, underscoring that relationship we are talking about. He speaks very good English, President Philippe Nyusi, despite that on official engagements he would always speak Portuguese. I'm sure it's an issue of national pride as well. We see the DG in the presidency as well, and the political support staff of the president on hand, as well as the president introduces President Philippe Nyusi to his members of cabinet and the advisors. They are taking a rather not so long walk. Now it's going to be the turn of President Nyusi to introduce his own cabinet to President Zuma. He's also brought various ministers with him to see which areas need strengthening so that this relationship that already exists happens. So the greetings have started, and I'm sure President Zuma will do a bit of Portuguese speaking, because I think he can speak a bit of elementary Portuguese. It would appear he may have learnt it during his time when he was in exile in Mozambique.
Very much. He's looking, he's going away, he's working here now. You want to shoot him out?
They have concluded with the introduction of ministers now. They are going to have a tete-a-tete between themselves, President Zuma and President Nyusi. Now they are going to start the serious program now of this state visit. They will start with the tete-a-tete, and then for now we'll hand back to the studio.
That was Mzwai with that report there from Parliament, and as you heard there from him, that the President and President Nyusi is going to have a tete-a-tete right now, and we'll bring you an update in terms of that particular issue. Now, as you know, the President is meeting with his Mozambican counterpart because we here in South Africa are faced with increased electricity demand. And South Africa and Mozambique governments have embarked on an ambitious plan to tap into natural gas as part of the energy mix. Economists estimate that the development of a natural gas industry could boost South Africa's gross domestic product by between 138 billion rand and 251 billion by 2030. We'll tell you more about that a little bit later. Right now, let's take a break and we'll be right back after that.
An ancient culture carried to these shores a lifetime ago, fusing, merging, growing to transcend lines, cultures and sound, embodied in a voice that speaks to you without forgetting. Do you listen to it? Lotus FM shared the experience.
SABC News team will bring you live coverage of the Tanzanian elections 2015. From Dar es Salaam, Zanzibar, and Morogoro, Tanzania elections 2015.
Technology is all around us and is improving lives across Africa, like how young Nigerians are connecting to the internet. There are doctors finding new ways to save lives in Cameroon, and the South African public transport system that is now getting Wi-Fi. We have gadgets, apps and loads more, some of which play a big role in Africa's growth. A huge part of this African growth is technological innovation. To find out a bit more about social media and technology news from here in Africa and abroad, join me, Phumelele Zondi, every Sunday at 7:30 p.m. on SABC News.
SABC brings to you Rugby World Cup 2015.
Let's do this.
Welcome back. Now, time for us to shift our focus to what is happening on the African continent. Now, it's estimated that only around 1% of the world's population have 2 or more passports, making dual citizenship a real exclusive privilege. Holding the passport of another country can open opportunities for business, education, healthcare, and visa-free travel for investors and their families. This week, leading investors, asset managers and industry experts got together at the Investment Agenda in Durban to discuss citizenship by investment and opening up of more opportunities this way for Africans. Now, joining us in studio is the CEO of Monarch & Co. International. Is James Bowling, talking about Africans wishing to take advantage of opportunities within the continent and abroad. Very good morning to you. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you. Thank you.
It's a mouthful. Before we talk about dual citizenship, just tell us about what you guys have been discussing this week.
Well, what we're looking at is the rights and the ability for Africans in particular to gain a second citizenship and the legalities around that. So, as you probably know, there are a number of programs out there presently in South Africa. One of the most attractive to the market here is Portugal. But there are a number of programs that allow through significant investment in that country, depending what class. A lot of the time it's through property. They're able to acquire citizenship. So it's in essence through significant investment rather than through points or your background or your work background, basically. Yeah.
This concept, how can Africa and Africans benefit going forward from this kind of program?
Well, the number of benefits that our target markets look for, one is tax benefits. So, for instance, if they're doing, or also getting into a particular region, for instance, the EU is not easy to crack from Africa. But once you've got an EU residency or citizenship, you're able to, it becomes a suburb, whichever country you've entered through, becomes a suburb of Europe. So it's very easy to do business. And then depending on the suburb that you choose, for instance, Malta, Cyprus, there are a bunch of tax benefits that could accrue as well. So there's a number of options and attractions from that point of view. But also it's just pure travel as well. Us as South Africans, we've got what we call the Green Mamba, the South African passport, and it's tough travelling around. The visas requirements are stringent. Visas are becoming harder and harder to come by. So for a lot of top-tier businessmen and high-net-worth individuals that do a lot of travelling, they want to make it as easy as possible. So that's where that second citizenship or residency comes into play.
No, this has always been seen as very much something for the elite, the very rich.
Sure.
Is there a scenario where it's going to become more accessible for normal people, normal Africans who are maybe simply seeking a better life for their family or seeking better education or healthcare for that matter?
We have seen a drop in entry-level requirements, and that's largely due to competition. There are a number of different programs coming onto the market, and as a new one enters the foray, they look to improve on the competition. But that said, it needs to be a high enough entry criteria or barrier to entry so that you are attracting the type of person that's going to add benefit to the country. The investment needs to be significant enough to warrant giving away a citizenship or residency, and B, it needs to be the type of person that it's going to, once their attention is on the country, potentially look at opportunities in the country to create business, to imprint, maybe put in one of their, a branch of their own existing business, that type of thing. So that it is important that they keep the barrier to entry at a significant level to keep the top tier type of investor coming in. Obviously, from the low end of the market, or the ordinary people, if I can call them that way, they're not the high net worth and ultra high net worth, they're going to be looking to come in on the points basis, so through their studies or whatever, that type of means of coming into this into a country.
Now, on the continent, we see a lot of travelling happening for higher education programs and so forth.
Yes.
How does having two passports allow for better opportunities within the education sector specifically? Just break that down for us.
Yeah. Well, what we're finding is a lot of our investors do this for their kids. So a single investment allows the primary applicant, the spouse generally, and their dependents, and it can even be their parents as well, in on the application. And now once they've got residency or citizenship in a foreign country, they're able to study there. If it's the EU, for instance, they can study and live and work in any country of the EU once they got their passport. So that opens up huge opportunity from a study point of view. Obviously, there's lowered study rates as well, being an EU citizen. Health benefits as well, from benefiting from the health systems of the EU. Each country has their own, but if you are contributing to one, then you can benefit from all of them. So
there are not many countries that like this, that enjoy this. How do you plan on addressing specifically these kinds of challenges?
Yeah, when you say there are not many countries that enjoy this, if you're looking at, are you looking at African countries?
Well, generally.
Generally. There is resistance because it's seen as weak entry points to a region.
Yeah.
That's why the criteria needs to stay quite, and the application criteria needs to be stringent.
Yeah.
There's a very strong due diligence that's done on each applicant. There's a huge background check, source of funds, criminal checks, and obviously all of that type of stuff. And then obviously the investment criteria itself requires a certain level of applicants. So there is a strong due diligence, and that's incredibly important to maintain the value of that passport that one's looking to obtain. Otherwise, it becomes the benefit of that passport diminishes massively.
Just quickly, from layman's terms, how long does it take? What sort of process is it involving? If you had to go step by step, and timeframes.
Timeframes, it varies program to program. It can take anywhere from 2 months up to get citizenship, up to 7 years. Depending on the program. UK, ultimately taking 7 years to get to citizenship, but you get your residency up front. So, for instance, the Portugal program, you get your residency after about 5 or 6 months now, and then you get your citizenship after 6 years. You're able to acquire your citizenship. So it does take time. It's not a instant solution, although there are some that take 2 to 3 months. Our Caribbean programs, for instance, you're looking at about 3 months to citizenship.
Well, thank you very much for joining us today. That's the CEO of Monarch & Co. International, James Bowling. We're talking about dual citizenship and the opportunities that it brings for the individual, and also how it works here within an African context. We move on. Thousands of women in Maiduguri, the capital of Borno State, are struggling to make ends meet since they lost their husbands due to, continued Boko Haram attacks and fighting. The United Nations reported that 2.3 million people were forced to leave their homes since May of 2013, when fighting erupted there.
Thousands of women have lost their husbands to the war. Nearly 7,000 of them have registered with the International Committee of the Red Cross. Most of the widows come to the ICRC Center to receive monthly food supplies.
When I become a widow, sometimes to eat 3 times is difficult for me. We eat sometimes, we hardly eat 2 times a day because no money. Before you do this to children, you do to yourself, their school fees, everything is so hard.
Being a widow is very difficult to have something doing. Even to find a job, because no one will stand ahead of you. So you have to have something doing by yourself. You will just find something for yourself to do it.
The ICRC is also working with the Borno State Widows Association to help them start small businesses with a $200 grant. A regional offensive by Nigeria, Niger, Chad and Cameroon earlier this year drove Boko Haram from much of the territory it held in northern Nigeria. But the militants have since struck back with a renewed wave of deadly raids and suicide bombings.
Now, as Tanzania's people prepare to vote in a new president, Parliament and councillors this Sunday, the country's Chief Justice is gearing up for a number of election petitions challenging the results already. This as the East African nation faces its fiercely contested general elections in years. Ending corruption and delivering economic change are high on the list of voters' expectations there.
The well-oiled ruling party displays its campaign muscle on the streets of Dar es Salaam, Tanzania's commercial capital. It's been in power since independence in 1961. This year, the ruling Chama cha Mapinduzi party faces its sternest test in Sunday's polls.
In previous elections, the ruling party has won by an overwhelming majority. But opinion polls say in this election it won't be so. That's because 4 of the main opposition parties have formed a coalition to try to end the ruling party's 54 years in office.
7 candidates are eyeing the presidency, but in reality it's a 2-horse race. The ruling party's Works Minister John Magufuli and opposition candidate former Prime Minister Edward Lowassa. Some here say ending CCM's rule will bring an end to rampant corruption. But ironically, Lowassa left the ruling party after he was accused of corruption. Those wanting change say he might not be the best candidate, but he's the only feasible alternative.
For a long time, CCM is good. For this time, CCM is bad. Life is hard in Tanzania because of CCM. Everything is bad. Life is bad. Hospital is bad.
Others believe Lowassa is tainted.
Prime Minister, who is a candidate, the former Prime Minister, his opponent, he used to become a Prime Minister, but he stepped down because of the Richmond scandal. But this man is a clean person. And now people, they need a clean person to avoid everything concerning corruption and everything.
20 million people are expected to go to the polls on Sunday. The Electoral Commission said it's ready to hold the elections. The Commonwealth Observer Mission, led by the former Nigerian President Goodluck Jonathan, has urged losing politicians to concede defeat to ensure a peaceful end to the polls. Shingai Nyoka, SABC News, Dar es Salaam, Tanzania.
Now, shifting our focus back here to South Africa, many foreign national students, mostly from African countries, are studying at South African universities. Reports suggest that most local universities require all foreign students to pay the full amount of their tuition fees up front at the end of January each year. Now, for a more personal perspective on how the fees, #fees must fall protest, that is, have affected international students studying here in South Africa, well, we are now joined in studio by Yao Valeri, who is doing his PhD at UNISA, and Eric Kowasi, who's doing an MBA at the University of Johannesburg. Both of them are from the Ivory Coast. Very good morning to you, gentlemen. Thank you for joining us.
Good morning, sir. Thank you.
I'd like to start with you, Yao. Maybe you can give us an overall view of what do you think of the Fees Must Fall campaign in light of how you guys are required to pay for your university fees here in South Africa?
Yeah, I would like to extend my sincere appreciation to the whole SABC as an organization, but also to you for the opportunity of the interview. It is to be noted that it's not easy for foreign students to come to another country and pretend to be studying, especially at a higher level. And it's mostly the parents, our parents who are sending the money through MoneyGram and all those things to pay our fees here. So the increase in fees is a common pattern in almost all universities, but more specifically in some of them. And we have been, as the representative of the Foreign Association of Students, we've been approaching some universities to discuss this matter as to how they could split the fees to the advantage of our students, but unfortunately that not always been the case. So, of course, the crisis in the education system in South Africa affects us enormously.
Eric, you at the University of Johannesburg, you're doing an MBA at the University of Johannesburg. You guys started with the campaign today. How is this all affecting you? And if I can ask you, if you can maybe compare the cost of coming to university in South Africa to what would have been the cost of studying at home?
Okay, thank you very much for the opportunity given to us as international students to express ourselves. Okay, the cost of studying here in South Africa, I need to be very honest, it's high and compared to the cost of studying back home. But one thing we need to also consider is the education quality and the opportunity of studying in English, which some of other countries are not offering in South Africa. And at the moment, with the strike that is going on, it's negatively impacting on the whole African society, especially the international students. And in terms of the fees also that you spoke about, we've got few figures. According to the VET published figure, actually the average cost to study here in South Africa, we hear between 92,120 and 121,080 rand. This is all cost included.
Per year? Per year. If you're a foreign student from, say, any African country?
From any African country.
Why did you decide to come and study in South Africa, if I may ask you, Jan?
Yeah, it is, to be honest, like he was saying, initially I never planned to come to South Africa to study, but I was doing an estimate of the cost. Whether I was studying in the US or in the UK, and I will compare it to South African fees, and I came to the conclusion that South African fees are cheaper than in those countries. And also, price is not only the major factor, but as somebody who was studying marketing and management, I'm more concerned about the relationship of the quality price ratio, that when I compare, I find that South Africa is a better country to study, and especially that when you check the best universities in Africa, South Africa got almost the 10 best universities in Africa, which is is something that is very good for the country and for somebody who is coming to take advantage of that system and go back to bring that input to the development of his country. So,
I wanted to ask you, yesterday we saw students almost storming Parliament here in South Africa. Have you seen such scenes back home, and what is your reaction to what happened in Parliament? For us in South Africa, it's almost unprecedented.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, we have seen all those things before. That's why, you know, I used to say that with 20 years of democracy, South Africa is not in a better position to understand all these things that have happened, because we've been seeing those things almost 40 or 50 years ago in our country. But also the thing is that when there is a problem regarding like what is happening currently on the screen, it is important to ask why students are behaving like that. And I would like to come with some empirical data from the Bureau of Market Research, where I'm doing my PhD, where Professor Joubert has conducted what we call, Professor de Klerk has conducted what we call the Household Financial Vulnerability Index, which specifies how South Africans households are feeling.
Yeah.
And the results clearly denote that the more we go, the households' resources are reduced, which in turn impacts on the possibility of the family to fund the studies of students. And it is important that when you read the conclusion and recommendation made by the Bureau of Market Research, it is because people have not read through that report that these things are happening, but it was forecasted. Those who knew, the Bureau of Market Research knew in advance that those things will happen, exactly like the service delivery protest. Yeah. It's almost the same thing. So we have seen those things, but yesterday was another level of development, whereby the students were at Parliament. They were intending to enter the premises of the Parliament. And therefore, it is important to come and raise some questions. Why are students behaving like that?
Yes.
One of the major reasons is that if you take the South African unique context, is that take into account the past of the country, we can clearly see that most students are poor. And if they are poor, they want to have equal access to education, as it is stipulated in South African Constitution, Chapter 2 of the Bill of Rights, that everyone has the right to a basic education, including adult basic education, and to further education, which the state, through reasonable measures, must make progressively available and accessible.
Well, thank you very much. Before I let you go, we're running out of time a little bit. I just want to ask you about the election back in Côte d'Ivoire over the weekend. What is your expectation of what will happen in your country?
Okay, my expectation of what will happen in the country is that election will be run in a very democratic way.
Yeah.
And we so believe that there won't be any disruption during the electoral process and procedure. That's what I believe.
And who do you think will be victorious at the end of the weekend?
Instead of predicting who is going to win, as a very educated student at the higher level, I think the most important is the development of the electoral process. How is it should show a democratic way of reasoning and acting.
Yeah.
And I think in that regard, we should learn from countries, not only European countries, but also South Africa. We can learn immensely from South Africa. And I think candidates should be very responsible enough not to drive and send the people into the streets to distract or destroy what they have built, what the country has as an asset. But rather, they should be calling for increased acceptance of the results of the election, which will be run through a democratic way.
Thank you very much, guys, for joining us. Eric Kouassi, he's the gentleman nearest to me. He's studying an MBA at the University of Johannesburg. Thank you. And then I've got Yao Valeri, who is studying a PhD at UNISA. Thank you for joining us, and all the best with your studies here in South Africa. Time for us to take a quick break. When I come back, we'll have a look at how climate change is affecting women on the continent with Paul Manara.
Your destiny is not determined by the township you come from.
The one place to find movers and shakers is in the township. It's just that they're diamonds in the rough and some of them don't even know it.
Being young with no experience in business is a challenge that Bulelani took upon himself.
I was motivated by the prayer. I was motivated by the love.
To be a novice in business was tough, but experience made him a businessman of note.
It took me 7 years to make my first million. I've got all the scars to prove that I started with nothing.
A journey well traveled.
For me, that is the one major thing. The ability to touch other people's lives. Nothing goes beyond that.
Join your host Puleng Mulebati on Bopilong every Saturday at 5:30 p.m.
It is important for everyone to know food safety practices and make sure that their food is prepared safely from farm to the plate.
Who ensures that there's compliance?
In terms of all the abattoirs, they have to be registered. So when they are being registered, they are actually audited fully to make sure that the structural requirements as well as the hygiene requirements are met.
Most bacteria and viruses cannot withstand the normal cooking temperatures that we use to cook our food.
The bigger retailers cannot be seen as being insensitive to the food safety requirements.
There are many consumers that actually go shopping with a cooler box and ice packs so that they don't break the cold chain, because a few hours outside the temperature that it should be already shortens the shelf life of that product.
Join me on Health Talk every Saturday morning between 9 a.m. and 10 a.m. as we unpack current health stories.
Welcome back. You're still with Newsroom now. With just less than half of South African households not having enough to eat or being food insecure, food security remains the most critical issue. Smallholder farmers, especially women, are on the front line of the consequences of climate change because of how dependent on the weather food production is and how dependent on that food their families and communities then are. Now, Oxfam estimates that sub-Saharan African countries are already spending around $5 billion of their own resources on adaptation. But this isn't enough to fill what is a widening gap. Now, for more on this, we're joined in studio by Rashmi Mistry, the acting head of the GROW campaign at Oxfam International, and, of course, our meteorologist, Paul Tsietse Monari, is with us here this morning. Very good morning to you guys. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
If I can start with you, yeah, you can look at me. If I can start with you, can you give us an idea of how many women in South Africa depend on agriculture, how that plays out into the communities, and how climate change is putting them at risk?
Well, in South Africa, we don't have precise figures, but I can give you figures for the continent.
Yeah.
So, on the continent, we're looking at about 60% of working women rely on agriculture. And most of the agriculture on the continent is rain-fed. So around 95% of it is rain-fed. So when climate change hits and when the impacts of climate change are affecting countries, so things like excessive drought, changing rainfall patterns, floods, it really impacts on agriculture, and particularly the women that are involved in agriculture who have very little support to adapt and cope with those changes.
Paul, how on the continent then is it that climate change will affect women more than men? And tell us about this effect or this difference.
Yeah. Well, as she just said it, basically climate change affects the vulnerable the most, the poor and the vulnerable the most. And if you look at on the continent itself, like over 60% or so of women are, into smallhold farming and so forth. And if now rainfall is changed, rainfall patterns are changing, and if you get droughts like we've been getting here in South Africa, and women have to travel longer distances now to collect water and to actually prepare food. As you know, gender issues that are happening in Africa are still sort of old age kind of. Women still have to go out there and make sure that everybody's got food to eat at home and get the water and all of that. And there's a myriad of issues that can come across because of climate change issues. For instance, looking at the drought when people have to travel further distances. I mean, if you can even go further, as in sexual abuses that you'd find in other African countries for young women and normal women walking these long distances. So it's just a number of issues that are affecting women. And if you look at about it, 70% of the poorest people in the world or in Africa are actually women. So, yeah, those are dire situations.
Rashmi, your report states 26% of females in South Africa are food insecure, and that in itself affects a wider community. What are the interventions that we need to look at?
Well, actually, it's 1 in 4 people across the whole of South Africa face hunger. And women are primarily impacted because, as Paul said, you know, women often have the role in the household to provide food. So whether that's growing food for their families or that's working to be able to go and buy food. And so the impact on women is severe. Now, what needs to happen? There are several interventions that need to happen. There isn't just one answer. And, you know, we need things like living wages. We need more employment opportunities for women and small-scale producers as well. We need small-scale producers to be supported. And I think that's been a massive gap here in South Africa and in many countries as well across the continent, that there isn't the investment into small-scale producers. And things like the access to land, access to water, means that small-scale producers don't have the resources to be able to farm.
Yeah.
And that, again, impacts on women most because actually they have even less access to land and water and the resources that they need to farm.
Yeah, absolutely.
So that's you know, there are a range of interventions that need to happen. And on climate change in particular, you know, climate change is adding to the stresses already. So small-scale producers are already finding it hard because of the lack of resources. Now climate change is making it even harder because of the weather's changing, rainfall's changing, there are droughts, there are floods, wiping out crops. And so they need more support to actually help adapt and cope to those changes.
Paul, just paint the picture for us. You know, how is rainfall patterns changing on the African continent right now, and rising temperatures, and how is that already affecting production, for that matter?
Yeah, you know, I had a look at one of the articles produced by the IPCC, and they mentioned how, you know, a single millimeter of rain in the Sahara Desert could actually be disastrous because it's such a dry place. So the erosion that would take place and the flooding that could also take place there. And just to paint the picture, when the rainfall patterns of that nature take place and when they shift away from where we used to them, if you look at the rainfall pattern here in South Africa, we get the wetter areas of the KwaZulu-Natal regions, you know, the eastern side of the country, and then the much drier areas of the western regions. So for a change to take place there, or even here in the country, it's going to be quite, you know, disastrous in more ways than one, whether it's physically in terms of how the land will be affected and also how the movement of people, migration of people rather, is going to get affected. It will lead to a lot of people moving to places that they've never even been, where development was not even as significant as it has been. So in terms of the rainfall changes and also the rainfall patterns, it's not something that's 100% sure. I've told you many times with climate change that, you know, so many things can go wrong and so many things can actually not happen that we think will happen, like the droughts now. Look, now it's spreading across the whole of South Africa, moving into KwaZulu-Natal, the areas where we thought we had the most rainfall. And you can already see what it does on food security. It's a detrimental effect on the government and people that have to supply us with food. So it's quite big.
Yeah, massive. We've run out of time, guys. It's a discussion that we can continue actually much longer, but we run out of time. Rashmi Mistry is the acting head of the GROW campaign at Oxfam International, and then Paul Manari is our very own meteorologist that, well, sometimes gets the weather wrong here at SABC News, he does.
There you go again.
We'll be back at the top of the hour. Alvis and Kendall standing by to update us with the news shortly. Less than a minute, actually. See you then.
SABC News. We report, contextualize and present news and current affairs honestly, fairly and fully. We consider it a duty to provide consistent, relevant, useful and top-quality information and analysis. Our mission is to provide credible, accurate and interesting news programming, bringing news into everyone's homes in everyone's languages. Thank you, South Africa, for relying on SABC News for quality news output and for making us your #1 source of information. SABC News, Africa's news leader.
SABC brings to you Rugby World Cup 2015.
Let's do this.
It's 1100 hours Central Africa time, the 22nd of October 2015, Jumbo Africa, and a very warm welcome to the final hour here on Newsroom. I'm Elvis Preston. I'll be with you until 12 o'clock. You have to stay with us as we take you around the globe with the latest news from here as well as elsewhere. But first, let's take a look at all your headlines. President Jacob Zuma has expressed his concern about the ongoing student fees protest and will tomorrow meet with the student leaders in Pretoria. President Jacob Zuma and his Mozambican counterpart Felipe Nyusi are holding bilateral talks in Pretoria. And mixed reactions, disappointment at the Finance Minister Nhlanhla Nene's medium-term budget policy statement. Those are all your headlines, but coming up in your sports news is the man himself, Kendall Makamate. Good morning.
Good morning, Elvis, and good morning to you at home. Coming up in a very short while, in your sports at 11:30, here's Bidwest Wits shoot to the top of the Alps Premiership after an own goal by Pirates keeper Owono gives them the win in Orlando. And Manchester City grab a win at the death as United get away with a draw in Moscow. All this while Springbok coach Hanneke Meyer talks up the New Zealand team as their best ever to play the game. Now you'll also know that the Proteas have started their fourth ODI against India. The current score right now is 7-2 for 2. India won the toss and chose to bat. But more about all of that a little later in the Sports Bulletin. Back to you, Elvis.
Thank you, Kendall. Let's now take a look at your top story. President Jacob Zuma has expressed his concern about the ongoing student fees protest. He will tomorrow meet with the student leaders at the Union Buildings in Pretoria. The meeting comes after the students marched to Parliament yesterday to demand a zero increase in the proposed 2016 tuition fees. Police used stun grenades to disperse the students.
I can confirm that President Zuma will meet the student leadership, representative of student, as well as university management tomorrow here at the Union Buildings to discuss a possible solution to the current impasse regarding student fees. The President really sympathizes with the students, and as you will recall that even in the January 8 statement, already the ruling party had voiced its concern about the escalating cost of university education, and that it was quickly becoming some sort of exclusion for poor black students. So the President really will be discussing this to find a solution as speedily as possible to the impasse.
6 students arrested in the Cape Town CBD last night following disruptive protest are due to appear in the local magistrate's court this morning. They will appear alongside 23 others who have been released. Meanwhile, an urgent application will continue in the Western Cape High Court in Cape Town today. Parents of the protesting students have brought the case against the police for their alleged heavy-handedness.
A tense day of running battles between irate students and public order police. Students are now calling on the court to protect them, and their claims of being manhandled by police officers have forced them to seek justice. Judgment in the matter is expected today.
What we will be doing later on is to lead actual evidence from some of the student protesters. They'll be detailing the rights violations that they faced. and the State Attorney Council on behalf of the Minister of Police will have an opportunity to lead evidence from their side, of course, and to put before the judge why they believe an order is not warranted or should not be granted.
Concerned parents too are part of the urgent application.
I got shoved and pushed around by police. I saw the same with others. And I then thought, this is impossible. And we called the Legal Resource Center, and we thought it's necessary to discuss the possibility of a restraining order on the police.
Meanwhile, the Cape Peninsula University of Technology has also approached the court for an urgent interdict to prevent students from unlawfully occupying any portion of its premises. This matter too is expected to be heard today. Late yesterday afternoon, large numbers of public order police systematically pushed students back from the parliamentary precinct.
We are warning you in terms of the regulations of Gatherings Act. You need to leave the CBD of Cape Town.
There were 10 standoffs as police moved in to disperse the crowd. Rocks and bottles were hurled at police while several people were taken into custody. Students at a residence at CPUT, not far from Parliament, say police also used force at the residence.
All the students from all the universities, they came inside, and then they fired guns and everything, like grenades and everything, and they tear gases. And other students ran out inside the building, outside and inside, and up there on top.
Last night, 23 students were released from the Cape Town police station, while 6 others remained in custody in Bellville.
There are allegations as well that are going about that this is the Hawks that have arrested them and they are going to face charges of treason. We want to refute those allegations. These students, I'm quite sure they will likely to face charges of trespassing as well as that of public violence if it goes that far. And as the Hawks, we are not involved in any issues of crime prevention. That is a police SAPS function, and we really want to condemn whoever is fueling these allegations to the public.
It's not clear when the students will appear in court. Carmel Lochenberg-Roberts, SABC News, Cape Town.
Well, we also want your reaction to the students' protest at Parliament yesterday. So let us know what's on your mind on the Twitter handle at SABC Newsroom. Now, police have denied using excessive force in yesterday's clash with the students there in Cape Town. About 73 people have been arrested countrywide as students heeded the call for a national shutdown. The majority of them were in Mafikeng in the Northwest Province as well as in Cape Town.
A directive was issued by the National Joint Operational Intelligence Structure indicating to our members, particularly from public order police, that they should use force only when necessary. And we are satisfied that the force that was used yesterday was within the prescribed force and it was necessary.
Violent protests against the proposed fee increases have now spread to at least one University of Johannesburg campus. Scores of students barged on the premises, demanding that no hikes be put in place next year. This as the call for a national shutdown of tertiary institutions intensifies. UJ says talks on whether they will up the fees is still underway.
Chaotic scenes. Another university bites the dust. Students say there's no clarity from the institution on whether fees will be upped.
We as the students are concerned because the university isn't letting us know what's going on with their fees, and they're saying they're going to announce during November, and November we're having exams. So that'll be a disruptive time for us, and we can't write not knowing if our marks are going to come out or not.
And then scuffles to get onto the premises. Forced to take drastic measures. These students say they want answers now on whether the university will increase fees next year. Well, they say if management does not heed their call, there will be no lectures here. That, too, did not sit well with students.
Long live the spirit of students! Long live! Long live!
university says while it cannot say that a hike is off the cards, it has already raised millions to assist struggling students. Griselda Lewis, SABC News at the University of Johannesburg.
Residents of Joza Township in Grahamstown in the Eastern Cape have gone on a rampage, looting shops of the foreign nationals in their area. Police were forced to use rubber bullets to disperse the crowds. This follows recent murders in the area where 5 bodies were found mutilated in the past 2 months. Residents blame foreign nationals for the murders, alleging that they cut body parts for muti purposes.
Police had their hands full as angry community members have been looting shops of foreign nationals. This after 5 bodies were found mutilated in different areas of the township. They claim that foreign nationals are behind the murders, alleging that they use body parts for their muti concoctions. They forcefully evicted foreign nationals from their shops and flats, saying they don't want them in their community. I buried my sister a few weeks ago with missing body parts. Our family still wants her full body. Police did nothing then, but now that we are fighting back, police are shooting at us. We want the foreign nationals out. Terrified foreign nationals say they are left homeless and broke. They deny the murder allegations.
I've been here as 8 years and I have 3 shops here and all has been looted.
I'm there and staying 2 years almost, but I'm from Ethiopia. But long time I'm there, but I don't know what's going on this time. I buy for 2013 that shop, 400-something thousand rand. I'm losing today.
Police have escorted foreign nationals out of the area to places of safety. They have maintained heavy presence in the township as the situation remains tense. Ive Poti, SABC News, Grahamstown.
President Jacob Zuma and his Mozambican counterpart, Filipe Nyusi, are holding bilateral talks in Pretoria. The development of the gas industry to increase South Africa's energy capacity and stimulate job creation will be high on the agenda. Nyusi is on his first state visit to South Africa since assuming office in January this year. Mozambique is South Africa's top trading partner in Africa. Now, faced with increased electricity demand, South Africa and Mozambican governments have embarked on ambitious plans to tap into natural gas as part of the energy mix. Economists estimate that the development of a natural gas industry could boost South Africa's gross domestic product by between 138 billion rand and 251 billion by 2030. The launch of a new 865-kilometer gas pipeline, which runs from Timani in Mozambique to Secunda in South Africa, has been hailed as one of the major cross-border public-private partnership investment initiatives on the continent. President Zuma and his Mozambican counterpart Filipe Nyusi will also discuss cooperation in the sectors of agro-processing and infrastructure development. The chairperson of the Standing Committee on Appropriations, Paul Mashatile, says that the Finance Minister Nhlanhla Nene's mini-budget was balanced, given the current economic conditions in the country. Meanwhile, there have been mixed reactions to Nene's medium-term budget policy statement. Nene has been criticized for not responding in detail to the wave of the university student protest against planned tuition fee increases. The minister's speech included a mixture of tax hikes, austerity plans, and even retrenchments in the public sector over the next 3 years. Nene announced that government had to slash the economic growth forecast for this year. That decline follows the worsening global economic environment, which continues to impact negatively on the South African economy. He says tax increases, including VAT, is inevitable. Minister Nene also dropped a bombshell when he announced that the wage agreement that was reached with the public sector unions earlier this year has put government finances under pressure. The minister will announce in his February budget next year which taxes will go up and by how much. Now, that's your news for now. We'll take a break and Eben Janssen will be back with you right after that.
We ask tough questions.
Have you spoken to the president about resigning?
We ask hard questions.
What you're trying to do requires a lot of money, and you don't have money.
We ask quick questions.
A quick one. You are aware that the PAC has now been banned by the IEC?
I'm aware.
And you are also aware that it has been banned because of you?
We ask good questions.
Are you an infiltrated organization?
We also ask funny questions.
Is it safe to eat your chicken?
All the questions, all the time, right here on Question Time, Monday to Thursday at 5:30 p.m.
Welcome back. This is Newsroom. Time for us now to diversify a little bit and, focus on what's happening in the regions around the country. We're still with student protests. Now, the University of Limpopo has suspended the writing of her final examinations until further notice now. In a statement, university management says this is to make way for discussions about students' demands. Yesterday, hundreds of students disrupted the writing of examinations after joining the nationwide Fees Must Fall campaign. Students are demanding that fees should not be increased next year and that students with outstanding balances should not be excluded. The situation is calm at the university at the moment, but for an update, we're joined by the university spokesperson, Mr. Kgalema Mahuba, who's in our studio in Polokwane. Mr. Mahuba, thank you for joining us.
Thank you to you and the viewers.
Just quickly tell us what's the latest with regards to the disruption first, and secondly with the writing of the 2015 examinations at the University of Limpopo.
Well, our students obviously were responding to the national call, and yesterday in the morning we were supposed to have a paper that was to be written at 9 o'clock, various papers that were to be written at 9 o'clock. The student chanted, and then the examination was disrupted. But during the day, as they were chanting around the campus, it was very peaceful. They wanted management to address them. I was there with the registrar of the university, addressed them, but the core of what they were saying is the issue of the fee increment. And I think that was the core which everybody is aware of. As of this morning, they chanted over the gates of the university, and unfortunately, staff were not able to get into the campus. And it's calm. They are chanting around the campus, but there's no damage to property. They're just chanting. I think it's this national program of shutdown.
Tell us quickly about the kinds of increases that you're looking at the university and how it's going to affect the most basic students there.
We have not as yet discussed the increases, and I don't want to be irresponsible and talk about the increases when we have not actually started talking. We're planning to have some meetings with our students so that we can agree on a figure. We normally follow a process of negotiations, and we don't want to be seen not to have respected the protocol that we have established. For sure, in our negotiations with the student structures, we will be able to come to an agreed percentage if indeed we have to go that way.
And where are you in those discussions with students about the shutdown and about the fees?
I mean, the shutdown is happening at our university. But what we are going to do now is to sit down with our students and engage in terms of the way forward. Yesterday, it was not very easy for us to have a meeting because of a number of issues. But today, as I'm speaking, we will be able to sit down with them and as I indicated, chart the way forward. And for sure, there would be a number of issues that are raised by the students. Some of the issues that you see, they are raising them on the placard. But generally, one has to accept that it's the question of the fees, it's the question of the outstanding balances, it's the question of registration, it's the question of accessing the results, it's a question of accessing the examination. What I want to indicate is that there has never been a time at the University of Limpopo whereby a student who's owing the university is denied entry into the examination room. That has never been the case. because we are saving students who are poor of the poorest. That's number one. And at the beginning of the year, I mean, we look at the academic performance of each and every student, and we weigh each and every case as it comes. But there has never been a time whereby a student who's well performing was denied registration at the university. Normally, at the beginning of the year, we also negotiate this upfront payment with them, and then we come to a certain agreement. That is why at the registration, in the last 3 years, we've never had a problem in terms of how we have handled registration at the university. More so that you will see other campuses, I mean, fighting for upfront payment, fighting for registration. We never had such a problem because we believe in the process of engagement, and our students would know that, I mean, the Vice Chancellor is one person who operates on an open door policy, whereby, I mean, he negotiates, he speaks to the students, he understands the plight of the students, and that is why we never have a problem.
That's very nice to hear, but you do have a problem there. The problem you have is that there's a deadlock between factions within your SRC. What's the latest there?
What I need to indicate that the first time when we wanted to constitute the SRC, we had a little bit of a problem whereby EFF Student Command raised some concerns about certain issues, and the electoral officer gave them an opportunity to raise those things, those concerns that they have. Remember that you have got SASCO, which has got 8 seats, and we have got EFF Student Command that has got 8 seats, and we have got the SEO that has got 1 seat. Apparently, there have been negotiations, but we, as at the management of the university, we don't enter into negotiations. We wait for the outcome.
Yes.
The first time we attempted to constitute, there was a concern from EFF Student Command, which the electoral officer attempted to resolve. The second time, obviously, there were concerns from SASCO also, and we were not able to constitute. Now, what we indicated to the structures was that because we started with the writing of the examinations, let's concentrate on the examinations. Because I think teaching, learning, and research is the core business of the university, and an examination is the core business of the university. We will later on look at the issue of constituting, and that process of constituting will be led by the electoral officer, not by the management of the university. As to how they negotiate, remember you've got the SCO here, which is Student Christian Organization. To me, I think both parties need the SCO. As to how they negotiate, us as management, we don't get involved in those negotiations. We will await an outcome as to how they have agreed.
I thank you very much for joining us, Mr. Mahuba. That's the spokesperson of the University of Limpopo. His name is Mr. Kgalema Mahuba. He was in our Polokwane studio talking about, well, the examination disruptions that took place there, but they've also got a standoff on the SRC, which is, well, affecting processes on campus there. Now, several students, I can tell you, have been arrested during a confrontation with police at Mahikeng campus of the Northwest University. Police used rubber bullets and stun grenades to disperse students who were said to be blocking the university entrance with burning tires and stones. University students on the Mahikeng campus joined other universities in what we all now know as the Fees Must Fall campaign to oppose the proposed increase in next year's tuition fees. Affected universities, including WITS, the University of Cape Town, Rhodes and Stellenbosch. Now, the president of the Student Representative Council at the Northwest University's Mahikeng campus, he joins us in our Mahikeng studio this morning. Very good morning to you, sir. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you very much for having me.
Please tell us, what's the latest with regards to student protests on the Fees Must Fall campaign and then the 24 students that have been arrested there?
Yes, the status quo remains. We have all adhered to a national call. And we have since, from yesterday, issued all letters of suspensions to all university staff that you are taking over and we are governing this campus. You have put it under administration for now. And we are actually prepared to do everything else that is on our power to ensure that they must adhere to the call of zero fee increment. But the students who have been arrested, actually they're not 24, but 41 of them. They've been arrested yesterday after they've been brutally assaulted by police. They've been shot at. And they've been arrested at the Mabatu police station this morning. We have been responsible for them. They should be appearing at court now. And we are hoping that they will be released just in a few minutes from now on warning. So we are going to continue. We are not going to rest. We are not going to relax. And we are not prepared to go and meet the University Council. The University Council must come to the Mafikeng campus of the Northwest University to ensure that they come and sort out the matter and address the students and tell them and reassure them that they are adhering to the call zero fee increment. The call by Minister Blades Monday that there should be 6% fee increment, and that of the Northwest University, which proposes 9.5. We are adamant, we are not prepared. All of them combined together, we are saying no to that.
Now, what about the end of the year's exams that's around the corner? What's your advice to students, and how are you guys going to deal with the end of year exams?
We and the students, we have agreed. All of us, we are together on this. And the issue of examination depends on the university, on how they are going to respond to our issues. If, for instance, now we are saying we must be able to say to them, we want no fee increment. And if they are insisting, then we will continue to take charge of our campus because it belongs to us and we must now take over and govern it accordingly. But as for examinations, as soon as the matter is resolved, we're getting back to examinations.
Yesterday we saw unprecedented action outside of Parliament. I want your reaction around that, and also if you can quickly tell us about racial tensions that we hear about on your campus there.
Yes, I mean, what is the problem when students, they go to Parliament and they demonstrate their frustrations? What is difficult for our own representatives that we have elected to come out and listen to our concerns? What is wrong when the students says we don't have money, we come from our children who work the land, who are domestic workers, who are security personnel, we can't pay fees. Why are you increasing? What is difficult for members of Parliament to hear to what students says? And then you want to also call on police to come and brutalize them. Is this the kind of the policing? Is this a police state? We are going back to the apartheid government where we must now keep quiet and listen to the man who is in charge calling the shots. And we are not prepared at all to adhere to that. I was saying to students yesterday that even if they can shoot at us, we must continue to fight until we get what we need. Because even Solomon Mahlangu, when he had a rope on his neck, he never gave up, he never sold out. He persisted and he continued for the truth. We must ensure that the coming generation that comes after us, they find free education. They must never face the same struggle that we are facing today.
Well, I thank you very much for joining us. That's Mr. Benz Mabengwana, who's the SRC president at the Northwest University Mahikeng campus, joining us live there from our studios in Mahikeng. Now, Mpumalanga's Gambling Board Chief Executive Officer, Mr. Bheki Mlambo, has been elected to be the new president for the International Association of Gaming Regulators. He was inducted as the new president of the association during the conference that was held in Lima, Peru a few days ago. Mr. Mlambo will lead a 14-member board of trustees representing over 60 gambling jurisdictions across the world. Now, to find us more about his ascension to this elevated position and what role he will play to ensure the smooth running of this sector, well, we are now joined by the new president of the International Association of Gaming Regulators, Mr. Bheki Mlambo. He is in our Nelspruit studio today. Mr. Mlambo, congratulations on the appointment. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you very much.
What do you think this appointment is going to mean for South Africa, but also for your area where you are?
It is really a show of confidence and faith in the way South Africa regulates the gambling industry. It is a show of faith by the international community for us as Mpumalanga Gambling Board that they could find a leader from us. So it's a significant show of faith by the international community.
You talk about the show of faith, sir, but what's the criteria used for this kind of election?
It is a I was elected last year as the vice president first. The vice president, in terms of the bylaws of the organization, is elected by the board of trustees, the 14-member board of trustees. Amongst themselves, they appoint a vice president. Then, in terms of the bylaws, once the vice president, then you are sent to the presidency in the following year. So that's what happened. I was elected last year as vice president and automatically became the president this year.
Now, what do you believe is your mandate, and what are you going to do with regards to the gambling industry, the improvements that you would like to see in South Africa, but also globally?
Well, the objectives of one of the objectives is really to improve the efficiency and effectiveness of the regulation of the industry across the world. We want to make sure that everybody across the globe applies the same standards in terms of regulating the industry. Everybody's got access to the wisdom, experience, and the knowledge that other jurisdictions may have accumulated over the years. So we're trying to standardize the regulation of the industry across the globe. But also for Africa, for South Africa, I think it gives us a good platform to begin to tap into the wisdom, the experience of the rest of the world, especially from jurisdictions which have been there and have seen it all and they've got all the experience. It gives us a good opportunity to be able to tap into that kind of experience.
Mr. Mlamba, I quickly want to talk to you about illegal gambling, because I'm sure that must be on your table as well. It's a scourge here in South Africa. How do we come to terms with illegal gambling?
We try. Illegal gambling has always been, for a better part of the past, has been around the brick and mortar kind of illegal gambling, which is where you find illegal machines, physical machines in some areas. I think as a country we've managed to reduce that to really bare minimum. But the up and coming, the difficult challenge that we're facing now, which is a new phenomenon, is the online gambling. Unfortunately, in the country, online gambling, as you may know, it's an illegal activity, and it's difficult because it involves technology. It's very difficult to really fight illegal gambling. We are trying with the law enforcement agencies in the country and also our partners. I think in terms of this association, the IAGRA, it gives us an opportunity to be able to tap into the experiences and knowledge of how they've dealt with it elsewhere in the world, and also to check, because you find that some of these illegal operators are actually legitimate and licensed operators elsewhere in the world. So this gives us an opportunity to be able to check with our counterparts elsewhere to say, do you know so and so? If that is the case, then it puts a pressure on the illegal operators, because they know they will lose their legitimate licenses elsewhere in the world. But in terms of fighting it locally, we're trying our best with the law enforcement agencies, really. And I think we one day are going to win the battle.
Well, Mr. Mlamba, once again, a fantastic achievement to be elected as the president for the International Association of Gaming Regulators. And I hope this ascension will only mean good things for South Africa's gambling industry. That's Mr. Bheki Mlambo. He comes to you live from our studios in Nelspruit, the new president of the International Association of Gambling. Time for us now to, well, clock is just past half past the hour of 11. Time for us to get a sports update, final sports update of the day with Kendall Moeti Makamate.
Thank you very much, Evan Joe Jansen, for that. Yes, I am Kendall Moeti Makamate. Now, South Africa will have to produce their best ever performance if they are to defeat heavily favoured New Zealand in the Rugby World Cup semi-final this coming Saturday, the 24th of October. Now, the high-flying All Blacks are fresh from humiliating France in a 62-13 victory in the quarter-finals. South Africa, who had to come through a much tougher test against Wales to progress to the semi-final, have only beaten the All Blacks once since Hanneke Meyer took over as coach in 2012. Now, playing the psychological card, Meyer has said that this is the best ever team to ever play the game of rugby.
I must say that I really mean this is not just talk. This is probably the best team that I believe that's ever played the game. If you just look at the record the last 4 years after the World Cup, usually after the World Cup there's a decline in performance. You know, Steve has been there for 8 years as an assistant, and most of their coaching staff has gone on. So they just got better after the previous World Cup, which hasn't happened in World Rugby. So, you know, this is a different team, but Faris faced them. He's faced the best teams in the world. He's faced the British and Irish Lions. So he knows what it takes. And we as a team know that this must be our best performance probably ever if we want to beat them, because they are the best team I think that's ever played the game. You know, we have to execute very, very well, use every single opportunity, and defend for our lives. And whenever we have a chance, we've always scored enough tries. That wasn't the problem. We've always scored 4 tries, 3 tries against them, and had more chances. I think it's more a question of backing our defence and be very, very disciplined in this team. I think we'll definitely fit enough.
One ODI win away from winning their first one-day series in India ever. India won the toss and Chennai chose to bat. Starting at 10 a.m., the score a little while ago was 86 for 2 after 16 overs. Here's how the 2 wickets fell.
Now in the air, has it been taken? He struggled to keep it down today as Rohit Sharma, and Chris Morris picks up the wicket.
You can get over the top and hit it nice and square. You see a lot of the Indian bats. Is that a wicket?
Yes, it is, and this time the little floater is not too far away from Quentin de Kock. And once again, the short ball has done it. South Africa targeted India with that, even on the slowish surface.
Now, currently the score is 119 for 2 in the 22nd over. Now, going on to local football news, Bidvest are now top of the log after beating Pirates in Orlando, and a late fight back by Black Aces saved them blushes at home as they scraped back a draw against Platinum Stars. Now, Dikwena started off strongly, rushing out of the blocks with a 2-goal lead.
That'll be a penalty. Side in front.
Both came from the penalty spot, with Ndumiso Mabena beating the keeper both times.
Settling in with his teammates, though. Skulela appealing for a penalty. It has been given in the second half. But Mabena sends Walters.
Then stoppage time goes from Leuha Manyama and Judas Musimaedi. And Mpumalanga Black Aces, a 2-all draw against Platinum Stars.
Anybody? 2-2!
And in Bloemfontein, Anthony Lafleur came off the bench to score the only goal of the game as Mamelodi Sundowns defeated Bloem Celtic 1-0 in their clash at the Sesa Ramaburu Stadium. And then an own goal from Orlando Pirates' goalkeeper Filippo Warner ensured that Bidvest walked away with a full 3 points against Orlando Pirates in Soweto, shooting them to the top of the log. And now for a look at the results from the other matches played last night. I'll bring it up just now so you can see exactly what happens. You can see all matches kicking off at 7:30 p.m. And then Ajax Cape Town 0-0 draw against Ducks. Mamelodi Sundowns winning against Bloem Celtic 1-0. Pirates having lost that game at home against Bidvest. Then Black Aces, who were top of the logs, 2-2 against Platinum Stars. They were 1-2 before this one. Then Maritzburg losing 2-0 to Chipa. And Polokwane City, they lose 2-0 to Free State Stars. Then in terms of the log standings right now, as you can see from number 1 to 8, Bidvest on 16 points. Platinum and Black Aces, they both on 15 points, having drawn 3 and won 4 apiece. Bloem Celtic 4th, Mamelodi Sundowns 5th, Chiefs on 6th, and Ajax Cape Town and Golden Arrows bringing up number 7 and 8. We go through to the latter part of the log standings from number 9 to number 16. Chipa United knocking on the top 8 door there. Orlando Pirates sitting on 11th. And then we've got right at the bottom there, Jomo Cosmos and Maritzburg United on 4 and 1 point respectively. Minus 12 goal difference for the last one on the log there. Now the UEFA Champions League group stage has reached a halfway point. And English teams have had a mixed bag of results. Manchester grabbed a very late win against Sevilla at home, while their neighbours United got a 1-1 draw against CSKA Moscow in the Russian capital.
It was a master tactical switch that gave Manchester City their win. Looking short on ideas with the scores locked, Manuel Pellegrini replaced Wilfred Boney with Fernando, allowing Kevin De Bruyne into the middle ahead of Yaya Toure. And it was that combination that gave them the goal and the 2-1 win.
In the first half, I think that maybe we play better in the moment that they score, where we had before that some clear chances, but we didn't score. It was important to draw before we finished the first half. And the second half really was very difficult for both teams to create one chance. Finally, I think that we improved a little bit more in the last 10 minutes, And we had the character to try to win the game till the end, but without giving space to a very good team as Sevilla played today.
Their Manchester neighbours, United, had a tougher time in Russia. Anthony Martial conceded the first half penalty against CSKA Moscow and then scored the second half equaliser.
I know that we have now 2 home matches, and you can say that we are at home very strong. So I hope that we can win these games, and then you are nearly qualified, or you are already qualified. It's dependable of all the results, of course. But then we have still an away match against Wolfsburg. So we are on schedule, I think.
The Spanish teams had mixed results, with Atletico Madrid scoring 4 against Astana, but Real Madrid couldn't get past PSG's defence. For the home side, manager Laurent Blanc had to defend, keeping faith with Zlatan Ibrahimovic, who misfired again. There were also wins for Swedish side Malmo, German team Wolfsburg and Turkish giants Galatasaray. Janet Witten, SABC News, Johannesburg.
Now, here's a summary of the results from last night's action, all from the UEFA Champions League, from groups A through to F. I believe it's going to come up just now, where we can tell you exactly what the scores were. For example, for Malmo FF against their teams, are 4-0 win for Atletico Madrid against Astana in Group C. Galatasaray 2-1 against Benfica. Malmo 1-0 against Shakhtar Donetsk, and Real Madrid 0-0 draw against PSG. Juventus 0-0 as well against Mönchengladbach. And Manchester City managing a 2-1 against Sevilla. And Manchester United, Martial, he's done pretty well. He's scored 5 goals in 9 matches. There is a 1-0 against CSKA Moscow. Now, the South African men's and women's hockey teams will be launching their campaigns to be crowned African champions again in Johannesburg this weekend. The winners of the African Hockey Championships will automatically qualify for the 2016 Olympic Games in Rio de Janeiro. But although SASCOC will still need to prove their trip to Brazil should happen, the squads are raring to go.
Ranked 15th in the world, the South African men's team have dominated the event. Egypt, Ghana and Kenya have started to emerge as tough opponents, but the defending champions are favourites to once again emerge victorious.
We're not underestimating any one of them, but we are confident with the prep that we've done so far, and also the experienced players being back. And yes, we lose a couple of players that are not available and due to injury, but definitely for us, we are very confident that we can win this event.
The players, meanwhile, are champing at the bit.
We're really excited for this opportunity. We don't get many opportunities to play together, and this is a huge chance for us to just stake our claim as being number 1 in Africa, and then hopefully with that end dream of qualifying for the Rio Olympics next year.
The 9 men's teams will compete in 2 pools, while the women will take part in a round-robin competition, with South Africa facing Nigeria on Saturday. The men's opening clash against Zimbabwe gets underway at 7 on Friday. Liesel Zankel, SABC News.
And that's it from the sports desk. Up next, the weather across Africa.
Yeah, that's your roundup around the continent. It's almost time for us to round it up. Just shortly before 11:45 in the morning, still here, Central African time. Elvis, it's been quite an interesting news day. Lots of things to wrap up with and talk about.
Lots of news. And of course, we asked you the question today, your reaction to the students storming Parliament yesterday. And Anine?
We did get a couple of tweets, and if we want to throw that up, we can let the viewers know what people have been tweeting us this morning.
There was a question. Let's see what some of the responses are with regards to this question. Brutal Truther says there, Kendall?
By choice. Okay. SABC Newsroom, rather, by choice. And what does being black have to do with this? It's not about race. Brutal Truther.
Brutal Truther. On point there. It's not about race, it's about money. It's about...
Nati Grootboom says, SABC News Online, this strike will turn ugly soon if the government doesn't give this 0% fee hike to the students. Hashtag fees must fall.
Yeah, those are some of your live tweets too. The question that we asked you a little bit earlier today, what's your reaction to students storming Parliament? Of course, interesting views. Some people ask what would happen in other countries if Parliament were to be stormed. Elvis,
remember Tiananmen Square?
Oh, that didn't end well. That did not end well. But what do you think? What would happen if students had to storm the White House, for instance? And could you even fathom such a thing?
Big trouble, Evan. But I just quickly want to tell you that Belleville 6 is also trending this morning.
Yeah, but before we go to Belleville 6, let's just quickly talk about this picture.
Okay. Well, this is what's been putting up on social media. Students actually saying that, listen, yeah, we are striking, but we're also studying. And this is actually on Facebook, some of the pictures that they're showing the world that we're not just out on the streets fighting for these fees not to be increased, but we are attending to what we need to attend to. We're studying.
These are the responsible ones, and we have to applaud them for their endeavor. Yes, young people are fighting against fees increases, and in the current economic environment, one can understand why. But, Anine, on that note, you spoke about students coming together at Wits campus, wanting to then, this is on Wits campus, they're going to come together, they're going to march to Lutuli House, is that right?
Well, it's very scary what's been said on Twitter around UJ students and Wits students saying they're going to march together to Lutuli House. I think we're expecting that to happen today. We know, of course, tomorrow there are big plans for students to march to the Union buildings.
Do we have?
No, we don't have that up right now, but it's been reported on.
But you also touch on the Belleville 6 that's currently happening,
and then, of course, the Belleville 6, so much to talk about regarding the student protest. Half the media, it seems that half the media has been shut out of the courtroom this morning. Our reporter, Abra, is complaining about that, but she has tweeted, Eben, that treason is off the table for these 6 students.
Do we have that tweet? There we go.
SAP's not allowing media in court. Only about 3 inside. The rest of us stuck outside because the courtroom is too full from Abra Barbia. That's our SABC reporter right there.
Yeah, these are fantastic days to be a journalist when you can't get into the court. What is she saying there, Elvis?
Yes, she says, journo in court tells us treason is off the table now. It's no longer a charge. Now, that might be good news for the students.
I don't think it was ever a charge, to be honest. But common sense prevails in the end. Treason. It's off the table, but you have to admit that it is a massive event when you try and storm onto Parliament's precinct in any country in the world.
Even you're absolutely correct, it is, but I also think it was the right decision to give the students a chance to actually carry on with the rest of their lives in context of what's going on.
It's not over yet. They've still got other charges that they've got. What are the other charges that, Nina, we're talking about?
Well, it is very difficult to say at this stage because this court... It's happening in court right now. The journalists aren't having access to what's actually being said, but some of the charges being mentioned is national key points not being respected, trespassing, all of that. So.
Well, yeah, and there are 29 of them, Elvis. 23 plus 6.
23 plus the 6. The 6
29 in the... Is it in the Belleville Magistrates Court or is it in the Cape Town
Magistrates Court? But they're calling these students the Belleville 6. So if you want to stay updated with that, just follow hashtag Belleville 6.
And remember what Abria said, that the case, the lawyers want the cases to be combined. Yeah. So we'll keep a close eye on that, and we'll keep you posted on those developments out in Cape Town. Student protests around the country. It's a national thing, they call it.
But the students are still studying, and we applaud them for that. Fantastic. Exams are around the corner. Let's hope that we fight for the same thing, our education. Exams, therefore, is just as important. That's where we wrap it, Elvis.
That's where we wrap it. Now, tomorrow we'll keep still a lookout for the budget, the mini speech. We'll go in depth in our pep talk with Professor Parsons tomorrow. Pep talk Parsons economic perspective. That's our pep talk on a Friday. So be on the lookout for that, and of course all the other stories that you'll be looking at.
Kendall, do you have a cricket score update?
The cricket score update, I don't have it right now.
Can we put it on? We don't have it on
I wonder if we can get it up on screen, but I can tell you this. I can get it quickly right now while we're talking.
Oh, you're very, very fast. India batting first?
India batted first. They won the toss. They lost 2 wickets very quickly. And with that said, we know that one of them was taken by Kagiso Rabada. Very well done by
the new superstar of South African sport. Why didn't you have it in your sports bulletin? Oh, you did?
You wasn't watching.
Oh, I wasn't watching, unfortunately.
You wasn't watching.
Well, we've got to go. Thank you very much for watching Newsroom. We'll be back tomorrow from myself and this wonderful team. We'll see you then.
Ciao for now.
The score's 133-2.
Media Monitor.